Welcome to the Trinity Health IHA Medical Group Wednesday Wellness Series. This webinar is titled Lifestyle Changes, the Changes We Make for Life. The presenting providers are Trinity Health IHA Medical Group Primary Care Physicians Charles Lee and Nicole Robertson. Both physicians see patients at Trinity Health Academic Family Medicine in Northwest Livonia. And I believe Dr. Lee will be kicking it off, so welcome.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks for that introduction. My name is Dr. Lee. I work with Dr. Robertson at Trinity Health Academic Family Medicine in Northwest Livonia. So we do run a weight management clinic in our office. So this is kind of part of that effort in terms of trying to bring health to our patients. So today, me and Dr. Robinsons are here to talk about lifestyle and obesity today. So when patients come to me, either they have a newly diagnosed diagnosis of high cholesterol, hypertension, diabetes. They always ask if lifestyle changes would be if this could be treated with lifestyle changes, and the answer is always yes. That's always the right answer. However, this is one of the hardest treatments to implement for the patients. It's very easy for doctors to recommend lifestyle changes. It's just a couple words. But on the other side, on the patient side, it's really hard to understand what that actually means. We are basically asking you to change your habits that you develop throughout your whole life. I believe that most people develop these habits either in middle school or high school. Basically, when you're going through puberty, you're going to classes, walking to classes, you have gym every day, you have a sport you play at in the afternoon, or you even walk home. You're eating a lot during that time to, maintain your metabolism in order to grow through puberty. And then you carry that habits forward to college. But you're walking miles to classes. You have food relatively available, especially with food courts and like almost 24 hours and a meal plan, essentially. And then once you get jobs, you leave a more sedentary lifestyle. The walking is replaced by commuting. You're driving to work most of the time, and you're still eating about the same. You're keeping those habits that you develop throughout your life. So it's pretty difficult to make those changes by just saying, hey, making lifestyle changes is more encompassing than just, change your diet and then seeing the doctor again. See if I can change it. Okay, so some basic facts about obesity. So it's obesity is defined as BMI over 30. So for the average height for males is 5'9", average height for females is 5'3". So the in order for male, it'll be 203 pounds, and for female, it'll be 170 pounds. Those are like the cutoffs that we usually keep. And this is the map of the current obesity rates in America. You can see that Colorado is doing pretty good. The big cities where there's a lot of walking are also doing pretty good. But most, so where was I? Okay, so yes, 5'9" males, BMI of 30 is 203 pounds. Females 5'3", BMI of 30 is 170 pounds. This is the current map of the obesity rates in America. Colorado is doing pretty good. The big cities, California, New York, New Jersey, also doing pretty good in terms of there's a lot of walking. Let's see. So, as we know, obesity rates are on the rise. The current rate is 40.3% of adults are considered obese, 30.3% are considered overweight. In Michigan, our obesity rate is below the national average at 34.4, but our overweight average is a little higher than the national average. And we know that obesity is seen in kids are climbing as well. Now, throughout the years, portion size is also increasing as well, and you can see it with the maps. So 1985, not really much data, but in 1990, you can see mostly blue, and you can see it transition to mostly red. Now, there's a lot of metabolic effects from obesity, a lot of consequences that we see in the medical field. So people have a 2 times risk of mortality from cardiovascular risk, 2 times risk of developing hypertension, high cholesterol, stroke, TIAs, or mini strokes, 5 times the risk of developing diabetes. You could get osteoarthritis, and as well as some obesity cancers, quote unquote, mainly affecting the uterine, the gallbladder, the kidneys. some effects on fertility and lungs, and as well as the mental aspect of being overweight and having to deal with weight issues. So this is like the kind of chart I was talking about. A lot of consequences, a lot of metabolic syndrome that can develop from obesity. So listing them out right here. So when patients usually say, hey, what type of diet should I go on? What type of things I can eliminate from my diet in order to get to the health that I want to get to? And usually they turn to fad diets, a lot of things you see on the internet. These are typically a short-term solution to a long-term problem. So weight issues is lifetime, is going to be with you for life, and these offer usually short-term um, changes in order to meet a certain goal, and then you kind of stop the diet, and that's not really what we're trying to do here. The best diet is the diet that you stick with. So going through the diets a little bit, so ketogenic diet and carnivore diet, a lot of the diets are like basically a form of keto diet. It was developed by Russell Weiler, Dr. Russell Weiler, in order to treat epilepsy. There is uh, neural protection with ketones, and people do see a pretty good weight loss effect, 13 pounds roughly in about 4 weeks. But obviously, it comes with some consequences. A lot of it, the short term, is you get this something called keto fog, where you're feeling pretty down. You are having like nauseous, you have GI discomfort, you're not feeling exactly uh, sharp, essentially. This usually takes about 2 to 4 days. It's happens when you're depleting your glycogen storage or sugar storage, and you're moving on into ketogenesis, and it takes about 2 to 4 days to develop ketogenesis. So that means that if you fall out of the keto diet, you have to spend 2 to 4 days to get back into the ketogenesis. So a lot of non-compliance with this diet, and it's not very sustainable in terms of eating this for life. And it's really bad on your cholesterol as well, since you're eating mostly fats. Atkins diet, Dr. Atkins, Robert Atkins, he's a cardiologist. He thought that sugar was the main cause of obesity. So he developed a diet that decreased the amount of sugars. It's not to ketogenic levels, but it's pretty close. Um, but it's like the phase. People do lose weight on this, about 9 pounds in 6 months. But there's a huge drop off, a lot of not non-compliance. There's a lot of it's not sustainable, and you can develop consequences similar with ketogenic diets. Like you could develop kidney stones and metabolic acidosis, which is bad. Your blood turns acidic. Um, Paleo diet. So this was developed by radiologist Stanley Eaton and a anthropologist, Marvel O'Connor. They deemed this the caveman diet. It usually involves a lot of plants, a lot of meats, as well as legumes and berries and stuff nuts that you find in the wild, essentially. They believe that the modern diet is what causes the obesity. So that's kind of what they are touting as the cause of the obesity. You do see some modest effects, 46% of total body weight in 10 to 12 weeks, but it's very expensive. You have to buy fresh fruits all the time. It does decrease HDL, which is the healthy cholesterol, uh, depending on the types of foods you eat, and you're eliminating some of the nutritional benefits of whole grains, legumes, and dairy products. Vegetarian diets. So there's a lot of different types of vegetarians. There's vegan, which is no meat products. There's people who consume eggs and dairy. Some only consumes dairy products. So they show some health benefits in terms of um, basically overall health, but it's kind of biased in the studies that they show because most of the people on vegetarian vegan diets are already at a lower BMI. They're more health conscious. So that's what kind of leads to that skew, that belief that the vegetarian diet actually improves life expectancies, improve with decreased rates of heart disease and cancers. And there is potential risk for micronutrient deficiencies like B12 and calcium, as you're not getting that in your vegetarian diets. So intermittent fasting, this is was on craze a couple years ago. Basically, you are fasting for either 8 hours and then no, sorry, you're fasting for 16 hours and then you're eating for 8 hours. The whole point of this is to try to decrease the amount of calories you're intaking. It doesn't mean that for the 8 hours you eat everything and everything, and then during the 16 hours you are fasting, you're essentially um, burning all the fat that you or all the calories that you ate throughout the day. They saw in the studies, they saw that it has the same effects as just a normal calorie restricted diet in terms of like eating breakfast, eating lunch and dinner. So it's the same effects that you get from both. People who do fast or skip breakfast, or also known as time restricted eating, people who do skip breakfast do eat a little more during lunchtime to compensate for the lack of calories that they intake during breakfast. So that's kind of like the philosophy of intermittent fasting. So Mediterranean diet, this is the healthiest diet. Essentially, they saw that compared to Westerners and Europeans, Europeans have lower risk of cardiovascular disease. They're consuming more fats, but the fats that they're consuming are unsaturated, the healthy fats, basically olive oil, avocado, salmon, fish. Most of the proteins and meats are coming from fish rather than red meats that we see in Western diets. And people do lose a little bit of fat with it, like 8 pounds in about 2 years. So slower, but there's no health consequences to this type of diet. There's no risk of developing any nutrient deficiencies. So this is a really good diet to adopt. A little expensive too. DASH diet. So this is a diet we use to treat people with high blood pressure. Essentially, instead of focusing on types of foods or types of calorie restriction, they focus on serving sizes. So you want to get certain servings of fruits, certain servings of carbs, certain servings of protein as well. And that way it shows a really good impact on blood pressure as well as your cholesterol levels. There is a modest weight loss to this, but that mostly depends on the type of meal plans that you get with the DASH diet. Now, this is kind of an example. You could tailor your DASH diet to how many calories that you are intaking throughout the day. So if you take about 2,000 calories, this is like the serving sizes that you'll see on the left side of the screen. You want to limit the unhealthy red meats, so high in saturated fats, limit sweets, limit sugary drinks, limit your sodium intake, and then increase your fish intake and fruits, vegetables, vegetable oils, essentially. So bottom right, you can see you could change it based on how many diets. So you could do a calorie restriction on this diet and to avoid basically developing any nutrition deficiencies. So in this So when talking about yo-yo dieting, when you're doing fad diets or you're going through a diet and to meet a certain weight and then you kind of gain that weight back and then you lose that weight again, gain that weight back, is not exactly the best thing for your body. So in terms of fat response to weight regain, in the study it looks at that, it looks at rats. First they calorie restrict them, then they start them on a weight regain phase. And they saw that in the beginning, if you look at B, I don't know if I can show you, but in B, they saw a lot of increase in the smaller fat cells, and they saw that as it progressed, as they go through the phases of weight regain, all these small fat cells they increase, and they increase this the basically the number of fat cells in your body. And then as you keep going, all this equalize essentially, and you develop more fat cells as you regain your weight. And oops, how do I get rid of these annotations? Um, hmm, yeah, it's like that. Oh, there we go. Tolerance, eating. All right, so this is like the model of fat physiology that they developed. Essentially, when you lose weight, burn fat, the fat cells themselves decrease in size. Unfortunately, you don't decrease the numbers. And when you go through a regain phase, oops, so you decrease size when you do a calorie deficit. When you do a calorie, when you regain your weight, you actually develop more fat cells. So these are new fat cells. The reason for that is that increases your um, insulin sensitivity, so you don't develop diabetes. So that is why it wants to have source areas where it can store extra calories or extra fuel, and those small fat cells they develop bigger. So as you regain your weight, you actually gain more fat cells, and that type of fat cells do not go away, so it kind of sticks with you, and that makes losing weight difficult later in life because then you are those fat cells when they're small, they're sending out signals to the rest of the body in order to tell them, hey, I need more food. I'm empty. Please fill me up. So that's kind of the con against fat dieting or yo-yo dieting, where you're losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight. So in this study, so they did compare it. I think everybody knows about the Biggest Loser competition. They did track a couple of the contestants after their weight loss phase, and they measure, um, their fat percentage, the metabolic rate, the metabolism, essentially 6 years after their competition. So after 6 years, only one subject managed to sustain that weight loss, and three subjects was able to go back to their previous weight. Two subjects surpasses their original weight. So our 14 to 16, a lot so 16 participants, let's see, five of the 14 able to get worse than before, while the rest showed some modest increase of their weight. So it was so the best diets are the ones that you stick to for the rest of your life. In terms of calories, 3,500 calories is 1 pound of fat. So in order to lose a pound a week, you could divide that 35 by 7, which is 500 calories. So being at a calorie deficit of 500 calories, you could lose a pound a week, and 250 calories, you could lose half a pound a week. So usually you see the max when you do first doing a calorie deficit or calorie restriction, you see the maximum benefit at 6 months. At that time, because you're at a lower weight, you have to recalculate your calories to see your new normal. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the basic metabolic rate for women is lower than is like about 1,200 to 1,500. For men, it's about 1,500 to 1,800. So we'll talk about this later, but basically emphasize on satiety over calorie counting. I don't want all my patients to be kind of neurotic in terms of calorie counting. It's not what I want them to do. I want them to basically be a little cognizant of what the types of foods they're eating when tracking. So you can decrease some calories by switching to artificial sweeteners. Um, so Coke Zero, if you're, drink a lot of sodas, or Pepsi Zero, stuff like that. Mediterranean diets and DASH diet is the healthiest if you want to do a calorie restriction with a healthy diet, essentially. Um, Also limit alcohol as well as include a lot of variety in your foods. So if we go back to metabolism is pretty complicated. It's made out of 4 different types of components. So your basic metabolic rate, what we talked about before, That is pretty standard. It basically is the amount of calories that your body needs to run all its organs, all its muscles, and basically live throughout the day. You burn calories through physical activities. There's two types actually. So there is the exercise activity thermogenesis and the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So eat and eat. And the last thing is thermogenic effects of foods. So it takes energy to break down foods. So protein is the hardest, then comes carbs and then fats. So processed sugars, refined sugars, those are very easy to break down with the body. More complex sugars like fruits are a little takes a little bit more time, a little more energy to burn, and protein is pretty hard to burn as well. So metabolism, we all know that many people have different types of metabolisms. People have higher, some people have lower. In this, basically in science, this journal was published in Science. They basically tracked the metabolism of many people throughout their life, and they saw that there's so much variation when it comes to different people. So um, you could see this so if you see somebody at 80 kilograms, one person clocked in at 5,700 calories in order to maintain 80 kilograms. One person clocked in at 1,400 calories a day. So pretty lucky this guy, pretty unlucky this female. So they do vary tremendously between different people. And I believe most of it is due to what I call the need energy. So let me see. So I think the biggest factor in determining why people have different types of metabolism is this idea of NEAT or the non-exercise uh, activity thermogenesis. Essentially, the the spontaneous activity here. So a lot of fidgeting, those types of things, like the people who move around a lot. Yeah, the people who move around a lot tends to burn calories more than others. That's mostly determined by genetics. It can also be determined by some environmental factors. So you fidget a lot when you're, sitting at a desk, like you tap your toes or tap your feet. You're playing with your pen. A lot of those things can contribute to burning more calories. And some people, they're on their feet a lot in terms of work and stuff like that. And unfortunately, some people, those types of standing work, they burn more calories compared to others. They don't burn as much. So essentially, this is like the what they propose of this metabolism. So in terms of So let's say that you do a calorie deficit, calorie restriction, you decrease the amount of foods you're eating. That actually tells your body that, hey, we're not used to this. I'm going to decrease the amount of fidgeting I do. I'm going to basically lay it around more because there's not enough energy available. And so this actually decrease your overall metabolism decrease when you are in a calorie deficit. But that once your body adapts to a new calorie restriction, then this will rebound essentially. Your body will understand that that is within its new normal, and this will rebound up. So when you're on diet, you feel like you don't want to move around as much. You feel like, oh, I just want to go home, lay on the couch. That's basically what your body's doing. Now, if you eat at a calorie surplus, if you eat a lot of calories, there's two types of basic theories that go around. Um, Either your body increase the amount of need energy, so you're fidgeting more, which is kind of the data doesn't really support this as well. There's not enough data to support this hypothesis, or it kind of takes all the new energy and stores it in your reservoir, so your fat storage, your liver, any place that it can basically store the extra calories. So they propose that some people they increase the need energy, but or others they actually store the energy. So kind of what they'll do believe, and that is like a main contributor to why many people have different types of metabolism. So in order to calculate metabolism, there's multiple ways you can do it. The best is this equation here. You could go on calculator.net, BMI, a BMR calculator, or TDEE calculator. That will give you the amount of calories you need per day. Oops. Or you can do a indirect calorimetry, which kind of measures the oxygen and CO2 output and tells you your calorie goals that way. So there's many ways to figure this out for yourself. It's pretty easy to do. Calculate on that. You could calculate the amount of calories that you can intake during the day for that as well. Now, going back to calorie counting. So if going back to our example, 5'9" male, 203 pounds, it's his BMR is 1,800 calories. Maintenance calories, if he's a very active individual, 2,700. If he's sedentary, not working out that much, is 22. Now, if you break it down more to if you're doing like a dietary thing, protein goal is zero point 0.7 grams per body weight, so 560 calories from protein, and the rest comes from fats and carbs. For female, 5'3", female at 170 pounds. Basic metabolic is about 1,400. Maintenance calories, 2,100 or 1,700. So if you want to, for the male, if you want to lose weight and you're sedentary, basically you're down to roughly about 1,700 calories. And for females, you're down to 1,200 calories in order to lose a pound a week. So protein. So the World Health Organization recommends basically 0.3, 0.4 grams per body weight. There was a study done on weightlifting adults in terms of how much protein they need in order to gain the most optimal muscle mass. And they saw that 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per body weight is the most optimal range of protein goals in order to either gain muscle or maintain muscle. Now, I don't tell patients to hit this goal. It's pretty difficult to hit 0.7 grams. I usually either start by 0.5 grams per body weight, so a little in between the recommendations of the World Health Organization as well as the study, capping them out first at 100 grams. So that way I could introduce the idea of tracking your protein or counting your calories just to be more cognizant of the types of food you're intaking. So I recommend like 100 grams essentially starting off. And then we can taper that or we could titrate that depending on how well they are doing in the weight loss journey. Now, counting calories are hard. It's not easy to do. They took dietitians and non-dietitians. They basically had them log their foods for 7 days and see basically how accurate they are. And both groups was inaccurate. The non-dietitians they miscounted their calories by 500 a day, while the dietitian miscounted their calories by 250. So that is the difference between a pound a week and a half a pound a week. So it's not an easy thing to do. Most of the time, we're pretty inaccurate in our assessment of how many calories you're taking. So snacks. So this is Howard. I can't say his last name, but Moskowitz. He's a food scientist. He essentially and a researcher. He in 1970s he developed something called the bliss point, which is a combination of sugars, fats, and salt in order to maximize the appeal of the product to the consumers. So was so he was able to see that in order there was declining satisfaction when consuming the same flavors. So if you kind of mix it up, it kind of makes you feel like you want to eat more. So renewal with new exposure to flavored foods. So for he developed the formulation for Dr. Pepper for cherry vanilla. Essentially, he dialed back some of the flavors in order to make it more tolerable, more so there's no overriding flavors. So it doesn't taste overpowering. It's not overly too sweet that you don't want to drink it. So just right enough that you want to consume more of it. And for Pego spaghetti sauce, he introduced the idea of chunkiness, basically increasing texture. So it's not just a consistent, smooth tomato sauce. There's some chunks in it to basically uh, feed the palatability of the food, making it more interesting, making you feel like you want to eat more. So this is not accurate. It's kind of a representation of kind of what I was talking about. Basically, these logarithmic um, um, representation. So for sodium, if it's not enough sodium, then you're not. If it's not enough salt, then you're not really interested in the food. Up to the point where it's like about like 2 grams, I guess. You'll have the most interest in the foods. Obviously, when it becomes too salty, then you don't want to eat it as much. So kind of like this is kind of what it represents, what he was doing, what he was trying to in his research, and he was trying to find the best point where people are the most interested in eating the food. So same thing with sugar. If something's too sweet, you don't want to eat it. It tastes uh it's like sickly sweet that you're not interested in anymore. But so there is a perfect point that they found. And same with fats and protein. So protein, very um satiating type of macronutrient. So the more so I was talking about before protein, carbs, and fats. Protein is one of the more satiating foods. So there's a point of diminishing returns as well. And there's a lot of data in terms of how to balance all these flavors together. There's a lot of math behind it, and AI is making it a lot easier to essentially manufacture these foods. They do call it food processing and rather than food cooking. So in the future, it may be even harder to basically resist foods when you start eating it. So satiety, so that kind of what I would like to talk about more. Eating to satiety, making sure that you feel full, so you don't eat as much, you don't feel like you need to snack. So food textures, there are like 4 categories that they were measuring in terms of what causes satiety or fullness after a meal. So viscosity, so if it's kind of like gel-like, it's that makes them more filling. For loop, basically for oops, it's hard to say this, but high lubricating gels. Essentially, if you think chips are very dry, so it requires a lot of chewing, it requires a lot of saliva production. That makes it less satiating, more palatable compared to something that's easy to chew, easy to basically swallow. So when you eat chips, you don't actually feel that full afterwards, and you feel like you want to eat more. You want to grab a soda, you want to grab a drink with it to make it feel like it's more fulfilling. So that is the thing behind lubricating gels essentially. And if the and the food is very heterogenetic, or such as fruits, there are liquid components, there's solid components, there's fiber components. All that can increase the amount of satiety. And obviously, solids are way better than liquids in terms of making you feel more full. And you can see on the right-hand side, a lot, interestingly enough, popcorn is very satiating in terms of snacks. Potatoes, very satiating, and fish is also very satiating as well. So, okay, so in terms of protein is the one of the more satiating molecules. Essentially, they saw that protein was able to increase the PYY hormones and GLP hormones. So these are hormones that increases the amount of um, fullness you have after a meal. They saw that the more protein you take compared to carbs and fats, the more elevation in these gut hormones, these satiating hormones that they saw. So they concluded that high protein meals increase amount of circulating PYY hormones as well as GLP hormones. Um, so that is one way in order to make sure that you're getting enough more fullness, essentially. So for glycemic index, it's a kind of mixed in terms of its effect on satiety. Some studies shows that low glycemic index can also lower postprandial hypoglycemia or sugar spikes after a meal. Some studies shows that there's no difference between the different types of high or low glycemic index, or like fruits versus potatoes and stuff. And speaking of potatoes, on our last slide, we saw that potatoes have the most satiating effects in terms of carbs, but it's considered a high glycemic index food, sweet potatoes right here. So it's quite mixed on the effects of satiety if you're, low glycemic index foods versus high glycemic index foods. But they did see that combining high protein with a low glycemic index diet does suppress hunger compared to others. So combining before with the high protein, low glycemic index foods, they suppress um, hunger signals essentially. So easy advice for patients. These are the like when basically talking when we're given like 15 minutes to 20 minutes to see a patient, it's very hard to give this whole talk to them. So I usually give them a starting off point in terms of what they should do. So first thing, drink water before your meals. That can help you feel full after your meal so you don't feel like you need to eat a snack after lunch or dinner. Eat fibers, so vegetables, eat it first. It's kind of weird to separate a meal because to basically broccoli or spinach, eating that first and then eating your carbs and your protein. But eating fiber first, this shows some effects on hunger. Eating slowly, so if you're able to increase your meal time to like 15 to 30 minutes, then you are able to be more full afterwards. Taking a walk after you eat can also help with the sugar spikes you have after meals. Good for it if you have prediabetes as well as diabetes in order to help control sugar spikes after meals. Getting more sleep. So getting more sleep can actually, we'll talk about it a little later, but getting more sleep is very important in terms of making sure you don't overeat. And then you can consider stuff like time restricted eating versus calorie restricted diets, essentially. So going first, so water consumption. They saw that by drinking 500 milliliters of water before a meal, the water group, people who let me give me a second. So people who drink water before their meals saw more weight loss compared to the people who only had the calorie restricted diet. So drinking water, 500 cc is about 16 ounces of water. So drinking a whole bottle of water right before your meal shows better weight loss compared to just calorie deficit, having a calorie deficit. And this is yeah, and this basically kind of builds on the previous study. Basically, they saw that people who drank water before their meals were able to decrease the amount of volume of foods they had, so about volumes of food consumption volume. They saw that those people were able, well, they got cut off a little bit, but essentially those people were able to eat a lot less compared to people who did not drink water before their meal. So eating fiber intake, before a meal. So in this 2 year study, they saw that they were trying to see which macronutrient had the best effect on weight loss and keeping the weight loss. So they took the food diaries for multiple people um, in a 2 year span, 345 people. And they saw that fiber, those people who lost weight and maintained their weight saw um, the fiber intake actually, the more fiber they intake, the more weight they lost, and the longer they kept it off. So in the B on top, right there, that is like the each quadrant represents the amount of fiber intake. So the quadrant one, no fiber intake. Quadrant two, about 2 grams a day. Quadrant three is about 2 to 8 grams, and eight and more in quadrant four. Those people saw the most weight loss. So the more fiber they saw intake, the more weight loss that they saw. And in Another study regarding sequencing. So essentially, they have three groups. Basically, one group is a controlled. They did not have any dietary restrictions. One group was only told to eat the fiber first before the main meal, so they could eat whatever they want, but they had to eat the dietary fibers first. And one group had a calorie restricted diet. And they saw that people who sequenced their diets in terms of eating their fibers first, they saw that they have similar weight loss compared to the dietary group, and they have more adherence. So people in the calorie restricted diet, a lot of them end up not sticking with the diet compared to people who decide to eat the fiber before the main meal, and they saw very similar weight loss in that aspect. So that was pretty good. So that's why eating fiber first is a very good starting step. So so this is this is a study when they kind of feed ice cream to patients, essentially, or not patients, kids and adults. Basically, those who got the ice cream all at once, they showed that there was lower decrease in the PYY hormones, the GLP hormones, compared to those that spaced out their ice cream over 30 minutes. So basically, they give them little bits of ice cream every like 5 minutes until 30 minutes is up. And they saw that those that spaced out their ice cream was able to have a bigger spike in their PYY and GLP hormones, or the hormones that signal fullness. And um, and then the ratings of fullness um, compared to people who eat their meals in 5 minutes versus 30 minutes. They saw that those who eat in 30 minutes have lower ratings of hunger compared to those that ate their meals in 5 minutes. So walking after exercising is, oh no, sorry, walking after foods is shows to have pretty good decrease in weight compared to actually sorry, let me rephrase that. So in this study, basically there's two groups, the diet restrictive group and the diet and walking group. Both of them lost weight except for the diet and walking group, like walking after meals and stuff like that, saw more weight loss compared to the diet alone. Um, So there is some timing regarding walking. So walking right after meals versus waiting an hour and walking. They show that it's better to walk right after meals, and you lose that beneficial effect if you delay walking. So right after, if you delay 1 hour, you actually won't see any benefits with your sugar spikes compared to those who walk right after their meals. So So sleep is very important in regards to obesity. I think there's actually two studies I want to pull. All right, so essentially they took people with 4 hours of sleep and those with 10 hours of sleep. Those who only got 4 hours sleep rated their appetite higher, their hunger signal higher, and their ghrelin levels, which is um, hormones that increase your appetite, those are also increased when you have low amounts of sleep. And in the study published in the Journal of Neuroscience, they took couple subjects. They subjected them to a functional MRI as well as interesting enough, they gave them money to bid on food objects as well. So those with less amount of sleep, they shows the same activation in the amygdala hypothalamic food reward circuitry compared to those with a full night of sleep. And those who did not get enough sleep actually bid higher on food related items compared to those that have a full night's sleep. So meaning that they're willing to spend more money on foods, they're most likely to look at foods. So they show the contestants a Snickers versus like a hat, and they're able to bid on either the food item or the hat, basically the non-food item. Those who are sleep deprived bid higher on the food items compared to the people who got enough sleep. So again, drinking water first, 2 glasses of 8 ounces, or 1 bottle of water, eating your dietary fibers first, eating slowly, taking a walk after you eat, and getting more sleep. So those are very important, kind of like starting off points I give my patients mostly, especially when they are asking about dietary changes within like a 15-minute window and stuff. So going a little bit about BMI and body fat. So BMI is not the best predictor of adiposity or fat cells. Essentially, this was developed by a mathematician, Adolf Quinlet. Essentially, he wanted to find the normal men. Essentially, he wanted to quantify it, and then it was adopted by a physiologist, Angel Keys, and then essentially developed to what we know nowadays. So athletes, tall people. Arnold Schwarzenegger, we all know him. He has a BMI of 30, but doesn't look like someone who you would consider obese. Matt Fraser, he's a 5-time CrossFit champion. His BMI is 31, but he's a very fit individual. And Hafthor Bjornsson, 2018 World's Strongest Man, also in the Mountain, for Game of Thrones. His BMI is 47. So people who are tall, people who are short, them and who are athletes, they are very inaccurate. So the best thing to do is to figure out the body fat composition of patients, which is a little difficult to do in an office setting. So that's why BMI was adopted. It's super easy. But ideally for men, you want to hit around 15, want to hit around like the 15 mark to 20 mark, and you could go up to around like 25-ish for men. For females, you want to hit about 20 to 25, upwards to 30. So a little more allowance for females because they have more fat compared to men. Um, so you could also do like a kind of like a visual check of how much a BMI. So around um, So 15, 20, 25 for men, and 20, 25, and 30 for a female is around a good ballpark of where you want to be in terms of the best healthy lifestyle you can get. There's multiple ways of determining your body fat percentage. The easiest way, most accessible way, using calculator.net body fat calculator. For men, you can get the neck circumference, the waist circumference, the height. They could give you a good body fat percentage. For females, you have to add on hip circumference, and that can give you a body fat. Not the most accurate, but it's pretty accurate in terms of the formulas that you can use to calculate body fat. You get a DEXA scan. DEXA scans are probably the most accurate in terms of measuring body fat. There also is something called bioelectric impedance analysis, or this in-body measurement where they send electrical signals through your body, and it measures the impedance when it runs into fat cells. And that can give you a pretty accurate assessment of your body composition. It can tell you your lean body mass, your fat percentage, as well as your basic metabolic rate. It's not on this one, but some forms do show that. And the last one is calibers. Calibers are pretty cheap. You can buy them off Amazon, but they kind of measure like 4 points, and you can get a pretty accurate reading with that too. Exercise. So there's a lot of advantages to exercises. This is Chris Bumstead. He's a 6-time Olympia. He's the GOAT. But a lot of benefits to exercise, including weight loss, maintenance of weight loss, and decrease in metabolic syndrome. So in terms of recommendations for exercising, the American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity or zone 2 cardio. So that basically means you want to hit about 50 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. If you divide it between 5 days a week, you could do 30 minutes, 5 days a week. in order to hit that 150-minute goal. And the World Health Organization recommends resistance training. You want to hit all the five major muscle groups twice a week. That is in order to maintain muscle health. So zone 2 cardio or metabolic moderate intensity exercise, essentially 70 to 80% of your no, sorry, 50 to 80% of your maximum heart rate or 70 to 80% of your VO2 max. So in order to calculate your maximum heart rate, you take 220 minus your age. So 70% of that is the target goal if you want to do moderate intensity. And if you we'll talk about this later, but for high intensity, you want to hit about 80%. So medium intensity stuff, jogging, aerobics, dancing, high intensity hit training, sprint training, weightlifting, and low intensity is just the walking, Pilates, and yoga. So going back to the amount of exercise, so they saw that there's two types of things you can do. If you want to save time, you can do a higher intensity workout, so 80% of your maximum heart rate, and you can do that for 75 minutes instead of 150 minutes. But if you want to hit that zone 2 cardio, they recommend 150 minutes, and that shows that they have lower all-cause mortality, all-cause mortality, cardiovascular risk, mortality decrease as well for both. This is vigorous activity and this is moderate activity. So moderate is so in terms of here. So if you want to be really good, you want to hit 300. So 150 to 300 for moderate intensity, and for high intensity, you want to hit about 75 to 150. So in order to hit this sweet spot, essentially. So essentially, having more lean mass, having more muscle results in more weight loss, more fat loss, increased metabolism, as well as yeah, increased metabolism is what this kind of study showed. Essentially, the more lean mass you have, the higher metabolism is. The more fat you have, the lower your metabolism is. So this is a pretty busy slide, but essentially it says that um, Aurora, basically, this whole thing basically shows that Aurora, basically cardio is more effective on weight loss compared to resistance training. Um, and it is better for visceral fats or central fats that are in your trunk space rather than your peripheries. But they did show that still, with resistance training or weightlifting, there is significantly reduced muscle loss during a weight loss period. So you're able to maintain your muscle size during a weight loss period if you incorporate resistance training in your cardio. So these are essentially CT scans of your body. So A is a young male, C is a young female, B is an older male, and D is an older female. You see that there's a redistribution of fats in males from the periphery to the central. So you see more fats in the internal organs as you get older. For females, basically this there's not much change in terms of central obesity adipose tissue, but there's more peripheral for females. And this is MRI, so you do lose a lot of muscle as you get older. So this is kind of basically a cross section of your gluteus muscles, your butt muscles, and we all know that as we age, we lose muscle. So in order to, so starting, so you want to kind of maintain your muscles as you get older. So it's good to resistance train or weight lift in order to maintain that muscle as you get older. So a little bit about back pain in obesity. So back pain, so fats, when they do run out of places to store, they infiltrate your muscles. We can see here that so there is no fat infiltration in the paraspinal muscles or your back muscles that hold up your spine. And as you have more weight, your fat do accumulate in these muscles. And you can see how they can, if you sprain your back, if you injure your back, you tear some muscles. If the fat is not a very structurally sound molecule, and so once you either tear a muscle, you strain a muscle, the damage is not localized in that area. It'll basically it'll basically travel to basically where the fat is infiltrating the muscles, and that can cause um, chronic back pain, which is very we see that a lot in our office. Unfortunately, that's why we usually recommend physiotherapy. We have to train these muscles in order to rehab it back. Um, but we do see a lot of this in our higher weighted folks. Now, there also is some changes to your spine when you have more adipose tissue. So essentially, this angle right here, they saw the pelvic tilt. You see more pelvic tilt, the more fat uh, you have in your spine, paraspinal muscles. So once you have a lot of fat storage in your back tissues, that is not very supportive. So it makes your basically your spine curve in a very bad angle, putting more stress on the nerves, the vertebral bodies, this the bones of your back, and that can impact these little spaces where the nerve exit, and that can also result in arthritis of your spine as well as chronic pain of back pain as well. And for steps, so essentially, I recommend about 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. They saw that so around like 6,000 steps is like the beginning steps. 7,000 is when you start seeing benefits. 8,000 is around the sweet spot or the best bang for your buck in terms of um, decreasing your mortality with the amount of steps. And then anything past 10,000 is kind of diminishing returns um, in terms of like time spent and walking. So, walking takes a lot of time, and you could get more benefit by doing cardio if you want to save some time. But essentially, 8,000 to 10,000 steps is probably the best sweet spot in order to hit. And 7,000 is a good starting off point. So I mostly tell my patients to start with 7,000. That is about 3.5 miles, and 10,000 is about 5 miles. So that is in terms of how many miles you have to walk in a day. In the study above, they show that even 2 to 3 times a day show some improvement in mortality. So ideally, you want to walk all 7 days, but even intentionally walking, getting those steps in 2 to 3 days shows some benefit in all-cause mortality in patients. And so some conclusions. So we're wrapping it up. Track your macros. Try to track your macros. Try to get a good feel of what types of food you're eating, how much calories you're intaking in a day. You could do either calorie restriction or intermittent fasting, whatever works for you. The best diet is the diet that you stick to for the rest of your life. If you want to choose a diet, Mediterranean diet or DASH diet is the healthiest. Focus on sustainability, meaning that you're going to stick with it for the rest of your life. Intuitive eating, basically focus on satiety. Do not eat to basically stuff yourself. Basically, what we talked about: drinking more water, eating your fibers first, eating slowly, taking a walk after you eat. For physical activity, you want to hit 500 minutes a week to 300 if you really want to be good. Above 150 is like the minimum of moderate intensity. If you want to go to vigorous intensity or high intensity, you could decrease that to 75 minutes a week to 150 minutes a week. Resistance train, maintain those muscles, maintain that metabolic rate, not metabolic, metabolism, and get about 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. And the best thing to do in terms of making sure you maintain your weight loss is having a partner. It could be a healthcare professional like me and Dr. Robertson, basically meeting up once a month to talk about your weight to make sure you keep on track. And if we see that you're on a good track, we could increase it to 3 months and stuff like that. Having a partner, so having somebody to go through this journey with you is also very motivating and keeps each other accountable. So those are types of things that you can do in terms of weight loss and on your weight loss journey. And then these are my references. And then I guess we'll open up the floor to some questions if anyone has any questions.
Sure, there are quite a few in here, and Dr. Robertson has been answering them as we are going along. If you'd like to ask a question and you have not yet done so, you can do so by typing it into the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you'd like to ask the question anonymously, you can do that. Just make sure you select that before submitting. Okay, Dr. Robertson, do you have any questions that you would like to bring up publicly? I know you've been answering them along the way.
Yeah, I've been really trying to just keep up with everything.
Oh.
Some of these are anonymous, and so I can answer those maybe as we go. Like I think a general theme here is just people really talking about comorbid conditions, and so what that means is your hypertension and your diabetes or your pre-diabetes, and how can you help with weight loss, and what are the right things for you. And I think Dr. Lee going through diet was really fruitful. I know that when we have patients coming in and they're struggling, even with just pre-diabetes, our goal is always prevention. And so we don't ever want you to become diabetic or have hypertension or high cholesterol. And so when we talk about diet recommendations, we never want you to do anything that's so restrictive that you wouldn't be able to sustain this for your life. I know from a pre-diabetic and a diabetic perspective, we tend to focus on, carbohydrates that you're eating. And so general rule of thumb is anywhere from like 45 to 60 grams of carbs per meal, 15 grams of carbs per snack. And really not so much focusing on calories, because inadvertently you will tend to eat less calorie dense foods because they tend to be high in carbohydrates. And so I saw like a general theme there. We also have a really great program. We have a pre-diabetes program that we work with. You would meet with a nurse and also have some friends in class that would help prevent you from progressing to diabetes. And we have found that really helpful. A nutritionist also works with that group. Other things, I think other themes of questions that I was seeing is, I've struggled my whole life with weight, or I have done every diet and I haven't been able to lose weight. And, what can I do differently? And I think we have to really consider that there are more things that lead to somebody having weight difficulties than just some like calories in, calories out. However important, we have to think about access to food. We have to consider genetics. Our gut microbiome is also really important when it comes to weight management and feelings of fullness. And insulin resistance is also another huge factor that we see in our overweight and obese population. So, but I think it's really hard to answer each question as specifically because there's so many other things that go along with struggling with our weight. And that's why when we see patients, I know Dr. Lee talked about, we typically have short visits, but with our, if we do a weight management consult, we typically spend, about an hour with a patient to really learn what their lifestyle is, how many calories they're eating in a day, what's their exercise program look like, if that's even possible for the patient, what's their access to food look like. And then we're able to calculate kind of what a patient may need. What can we work with what they have at home? Are they able to exercise or not? And then take that into account of what they can do. So that was just my spiel. That was kind of like the theme, but I can go through some of these individually and answer some of these. Let's see.
I think there were a couple asking for some recommendations on good sources of fiber. Is that something you could easily discuss?
Yeah. So really good sources of fiber are going to be things like beans. Your greens are really great sources of fiber. Sweet potatoes are great sources of fiber. Even doing fiber supplementation and can be helpful if it's a struggle. I know that patients will feel uncomfortable when they start increasing their fiber. So bloating and gas can be expected when you increase your fiber, especially if you're not used to getting enough of it. And so usually what I'll tell people to do is gradually increase that. So for example, a woman should get about 25 grams of fiber a day. And so if we're talking and they're maybe getting 10 grams a day, maybe increasing it to 15 for a week, and then increasing that to 20, and then 25 thereafter, but expect some bloating and whatnot. But yeah, so greens, your sweet potatoes, your beans, lentils are great. Yeah. Dr. Lee, any other suggestions for fiber? I think those are your biggies.
Yeah, basically what you like. Fruits are really good in fiber supplements.
Yes, the skin on fruits is good. The apple skin is great. Yeah, fruit.
If you need help, you can also always do Metamucil or like
Yeah.
silk husk in terms of increasing your fiber. Oatmeal is also great in fiber as well. If you need like some type of source, obviously don't add too much sugar in your oatmeal. Yeah, those are some examples that you can do.
Okay. I'll ask a couple questions here that I've found, but feel free to interrupt me if you have one you'd like to highlight. Can you talk about how many hours of sleep is recommended? Like, what is a realistic number for somebody who has a busy life?
Yeah, so I think everyone's requirement is different, but we really want to get at least 6 to 8 hours, at least within that window of 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And also it depends on when somebody is sleeping. So, those that work night shift, we know their cortisol levels are different than somebody else. And with that can come difficulty losing weight. And so shift workers may struggle more. They may also find that during their hunger windows at night, they crave things that are more carb centric or sugar centric. And so that can be difficult. Those that struggle with obstructive sleep apnea, for example, they may think they're getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep, but it's inefficient sleep. And so what happens is that impacts their circadian cycle, which impacts hormones that make us feel full, that can make it harder for us to lose weight. So adequate sleep, super important. Obstructive sleep apnea, if there's even a question, definitely get evaluated for it. And the nice thing about obstructive sleep apnea, if it's related to body habitus, and so if it's related to our weight, if we lose weight, our requirements for that reduce. And these are reversible diseases if we can lose the weight.
Okay. And you talked about intermittent fasting. Can you talk a little more? Is that something that you recommend for patients as a successful way to lose weight?
So I think it depends on the person and what they're eating in their window. So there actually was a recent study that showed that people lost a good amount of weight with intermittent fasting. But during that window, we shouldn't be eating pizza and hamburgers and things like that, right? And so even if we're intermittent fasting, which would reduce the total amount of calories you're eating in a day, assuming you're eating more of a Mediterranean diet, for example, right? We don't want you consuming 3,000 calories in a 6 hour window.
Yeah, it kind of depends on you.
Yeah.
Some people don't do well with intermittent fasting because their hunger signals are way too high and then they can't focus on their work or concentrate on their life. So that is a little debilitating for them. Some people it works great. So it kind of depends on you. It's kind of like a trial and error type of thing. Try it. If it doesn't work, then you know.
So
I
it's
also
really,
think that
sorry, go ahead.
I also think that if somebody's really physically active, so they have an exercise program that's demanding from a strength training perspective, intermittent fasting may not work. Because if we want to build muscle, we have to consume protein before and after our strength training sessions. And so intermittent fasting may not work for somebody that's training like that or doing long distance running or something like that.
Okay, so it's really not one size fits all. You
No.
find,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly what works for you. Um, so what if you are someone who needs to lose weight, but you have back issues or some other kind of a physical ailment that's stopping you from exercising? Can you make some changes with diet alone and maybe find some exercises that you could work in with your physical ailment?
Yeah, absolutely. So weight loss, the majority of your weight loss is really going to come from your diet modifications. Adding exercise into your lifestyle changes is great for cardiovascular health. If you are strength training, you're increasing muscle, which helps you burn more calories. It also bodes for longevity and maintenance of your weight loss. And we understand that some people can't do that. So diet changes alone will give, will give you the results that you need. We also will work with physical therapy to find exercises that may work best for you in the home. So we can refer to physical therapy if chronic back pain is something that somebody's struggling with. They can give a home exercise program, maybe the first couple visits, and then that patient can go home and utilize that kind of exercise. Also, things like modified yoga is a really good option for people that may struggle with chronic joint, lower back, or pelvic issues. So Pilates, there's not a whole lot of augmenting with Pilates, but that also is a really good form of exercise, especially with core work. And if somebody's having a lot of lower back pain, sometimes increasing their core strength can be really beneficial to them.
Yeah, so yeah, pain is a pretty big issue. One thing you can do is aerobic sports, so decrease the amount of load you have on your body. What's interesting enough is that 1 pound weight loss is 10 pounds or 7 to 10 pounds off your knees. So just a modest amount of weight loss can result in a huge impact in terms of like arthritis, mitigating those factors. And if we go back to the metabolism slide, your exercise only makes up a small amount of your metabolism. I get to it. One thing you can modify, oops, yeah. One thing you can modify is your NEAT or your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So like the fidgeting, the fact that like getting up. So if you're one of those type of people that don't sit still, you can try to modify those factors. Like basically, it may annoy your coworkers, but like tapping fingers, like spinning a pen, tapping your foot, getting up or walking around, those type of things you can do in terms of making sure that you keep your energy consumption up. So exercise is only makes up a small part of it.
Okay, and there are a lot of questions about age. Do you ever reach an age, like this person's asking specifically about over 60, where you're not going to be able to lose weight? Is it too late at 60 to lose a lot of weight?
No, I've personally had patients that have lost weight after 60. I think it really depends on their lifestyle, right? So, at 60, are you going to build the same amount of muscle mass as you would, at 20? Probably not. However, it's still possible. And it really depends on their calorie intake. And so being able to look at that and figure out what their needs are to maintain their current weight versus what their needs will be to lose a certain amount of weight. And so we would have to evaluate that and then incorporate exercises that could build muscle to help them burn more calories as well if they're not already doing something like that. And hormones really play a role in and can really play a role in weight. And so has something changed there? I know when we're postmenopausal versus men who may have lower testosterone, things like that can also impact weight. And so how can we help with those things too? It really is very patient dependent, but I think there's no reason to say that a 60-year-old person, 70-year-old person couldn't lose weight.
I definitely agree. It's definitely harder as you get older, but it's not impossible. It's never too late. You should never think it's ever too late. The best time to start something was yesterday. The second best time is today. So the good thing is that if you never worked out, there's something called newbie gains, very big in the weightlifting world. Um, but just lifting, doing some resistance training, using machines. Do not try to do free weights, but those can stimulate muscle growth in any age group.
Okay, and there are a lot of questions about some of the, I would say, trending weight loss drugs that are out there. I know I saw Wegovy and Ozempic. There are other diet pills. I think hers is a big brand right now. Do you work with patients who are interested in taking that approach to weight loss?
Yeah, so hers is actually a company that supplies usually compounded GLP medications, and GLP medications, examples of those are things like Wegovy, Zepbound, Saxenda. Um, and then, so that's not a medicine. That's really just a company that you would join that would then supply that to you in a compounded form. So, but yes, we work often with patients we utilize medications in addition to lifestyle and behavioral changes. They are great. I mean, we have seen really good success with a lot of different weight loss medications, not just GLPs. We utilize metformin, we utilize Wellbutrin, which is a mood medication. We utilize Topamax and Adipex. There's also Plenity, which is it's actually considered a medical equipment. I've utilized this in a few patients and have not had great success. And so oftentimes we don't prescribe that. We just don't want to waste patients' time and money, especially if they're going to feel frustrated, because weight loss is hard and being frustrated is not fun. So, but we have had really great success with our patients that have utilized GLP medications and also changed lifestyle and behaviors. It really bodes well for sustainability. And they work really well, and they've got some really great cardiovascular benefits. We also know with weight loss that reduces cardiovascular risk, as well as chronic pain, mood changes, and cancer risks. So, but yes, yeah. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, we use GLP medications and alternative medications if GLPs are not covered. We will try to utilize other things to help with weight loss.
Yeah, so part of our weight management clinic is balancing patient education, lifestyle change, and medication. So if you ever need help with a weight loss, we definitely utilize medications to help you out. The GLP-1s are great. They work really well, really fast. For some, it doesn't work. For others, it works amazingly. So it's like it's also patient dependent. Um, but yeah, it's a good medication. We use it a lot, and in terms of compounding pharmacies for Wegovy, cost is always an issue. It's very expensive. That it works very well. It's very expensive. There's no recommendations on when to stop it. But for compounding, they don't. For compounders, they don't really have the same stringent regulations as the branded names. So we can't exactly recommend it. But you know, cost is always the issue for patients. So we try to keep that in mind.
Okay, I know we're over our hour here, but if you are both okay to stand for a couple more minutes, there are a number of questions, and I just have a couple more I could throw out there. Is that
Trying
right?
to answer some too, like typing while you all were talking.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate the help. So there's a question about the intensity of the exercise when you're getting those 7 to 10,000 steps or 150 to 300 minutes. You don't have to start intense, right? This could be a slow walk around the block.
Yeah, I think Dr. Lee will probably agree that normally what we encourage for our patients is a graduated exercise program, and especially in those that have not been exercisers. Some people don't enjoy it or don't want to do it or don't have the time, right? And so usually what I'll tell people who are just getting into it, take a walk around the block, take 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can do, and just go around the block. Sometimes they'll say carry some light weights with you, and you can do that. Sometimes it's, I don't have time to do anything. So in the middle of your workday, go up and down your stairs, walk around your house, to try to get your steps. But yeah, just non-vigorous, light exercise and work your way up. So if week 1 is 10 minutes, then week 2 can be 20. And after that, it can be 30, and just slowly do that. Walking is also a great form of exercise. So if that's all people can do, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Anything outside of what you're normally doing during the day is more than you were doing before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you could definitely walk more than 10,000 steps. It's not like I'm saying you can't. Anything beyond that is it could be considered cardio. If you want, you could do like a 3, 15, 12, 15, 30 thing on the treadmill where you do 3 speed incline, max incline, walk for 30 minutes. A little easier on the knees, and you get a more stimulating workout. Low intensity is always good. You just, I guess they don't have any data regarding low intensity exercise and decrease in all mortality. They mostly focus on the moderate intensity and high intensity. So I'm not going to say anything about that. But getting any sort of activity in is always good.
Okay, and I have heard personally from a number of sources that you shouldn't eat at night, or you shouldn't eat, past dinner or when late at night before bed. Is that true?
So I guess it depends on what your schedule is, right? So, we wouldn't want you to have your dinner and then go to sleep. If you're a night snacker, something that's protein rich would be a better idea. Essentially, what happens when you sleep is your liver gives your body energy to sustain throughout the night. And so when we have, say, a lot of sugar before we sleep, and that can be in the form of carbohydrates, so things like crackers and stuff all turn to sugar as well, that can impact our insulin levels and our sugar levels. Yeah, so we definitely would prefer, if you are a snacker at night, to have a protein rich snack versus something that's going to be processed or carbohydrate or sugary rich. And yeah, Dr. Lee, anything on that?
Yeah, in terms of eating, the timing, so eating at night, the biggest thing I'm worried about if you have like acid reflux, you eat a whole meal and then fall asleep, that can stimulate that acid reflux and cause some discomfort. In terms of eating that you shouldn't eat at night, I want to say it's a hard no. As long as you're below your calories of the day, you still lose weight regardless of what time you eat. If you're a diabetic, then that's a little different of a story. You want to control your sugars more. You're not exercising, so you're not utilizing those sugars at night. I think the idea comes from the fact that during the day, you're out and about, you're consuming those calories, you're utilizing those calories, and you're not utilizing that much at night when you're sleeping. But at the end of the day, I think it depends on how much your calories intaking throughout the day. Shouldn't matter too much, but obviously try to limit the amount of snacks you have at night.
Okay. And do you have opinions on protein shakes? Are they good options for meal substitutes?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you would get your food from whole food, but if time constraints are there or you're not getting enough protein in your day and this is really the only way to do it, I think that protein shakes are generally good. You do have to watch the sugar content in some of them, also the types of sugars. And so if people don't tolerate like sugar alcohols or alternative sugars, that's something to watch out for. Some people digest whey really well and others don't. So I think the type matters for some, but that's kind of user dependent. But I think if that's the way you can get your protein in, and also feel full and not overeat, then that would be a fine way to get a meal in or a snack in.
Yeah, I'm very favorable to a whey protein or protein supplements in general. However, whey protein has a lot of cholesterol in it, so you could get your proteins from plant-based proteins. The biggest amino acid that stimulates muscle growth is leucine, which is a branched chain amino acid that is seen in both plant-based as well as animal-based protein. But and before, solids are more filling than liquid. You could make a smoothie with it. I wouldn't say it'll hurt you. Just make sure that it's a good snack too. Yeah.
Okay, and there's some questions too about resources offered for people on a weight loss journey. And I know we have a lot of resources throughout the medical group. We have a lifestyle medicine program. We have HMR at the hospital. Is that something you help people find a resource that will be helpful for them personally?
Yep. So we can place referrals to our nutritionist group. We've even placed referrals to our behavioral health group if eating is really based on depression and anxiety, even binge eating disorders. And so we've also utilized social work and our behavioral health group. We have our prediabetes program, like we talked about. They also have a weight loss program that they're doing. We had a question about it, the HMR program, and we can always refer to that as well. Our bariatric surgeons, if that's something that our patients are interested in, we can always refer to them. I know Trinity in Ann Arbor also has the farm. And so doing some co-opt foods and things like that, we can place prescriptions for. What else, Dr. Lee? Anything else? Other referrals? I know PT we use. We've used we use nutrition, behavioral, social work. I mean, we try to identify areas that we can support our patients the best we can.
Yeah, there's a lot of free ones online. Obviously, you have to be careful where you're getting your information. But some people I watch on YouTube, Jeff Nippard, Huberman podcast is also a good source of good information. Um, what else? Rest purification, that's another PhD food scientist, or like not food scientist, but like a exercise scientist that I follow as well. So a lot of online resources there. MyFitnessPal is free. There's some paid apps in terms of tracking calories and stuff like that. Yeah, but there is a lot of things out there. It's hard to like cut through what is good for you. There's also, Mediterranean diet food like cookbooks that you can use as well. Vegetarian cookbooks, those types of things that can, spice up your diet. But those are kind of things I think of.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know our vegetarian and vegan population tend to struggle a little bit with food choices. And there's a Dr. Geiger. He's written a book called How Not to Diet. And he's a really good resource. A lot of research-based information about what can be utilized. He offers recipes and stuff like that. So he'd also be a really good resource for that.
Excellent. And we will share these resources in the email. So I will try to list the names of the publications that they've listed, or some of the local resources that we have, especially at IHA. And then also, I think community resources can be good too. There can be some free, especially indoor options, living in the state of Michigan, where you can actually get some exercise year round. And you might even be able to find some new friends or a support group that can do it with you along the way.